Begin today the Gemara on Daf Tzadik Hey Yamad Aleph, 4 lines down from the top of the Yamad. The Gemara here continues the halachas of the Shomrim. So the Gemara starts with the halacha by a shoyl. Geneve va'aveda b'shoyl minolan. From where do we know that a shoyl is responsible for Geneve and Aveda? So in the pasuk, it actually says clearly that nishbar meis, if there's an einis, if it breaks or dies, that he's responsible. Well, how do you know he's responsible for if it gets stolen or lost? And if you'll argue and say, we could learn it from the fact that the Torah says that he's responsible if it breaks or dies. So he should also be responsible for Gneva and Aveda, and it's really even a Kal V'chomer. It's less of an Einus. So the Gemara says, you can't learn out from that. Because if it broke or it died, so it's gone, it's over. That's something that you can't bring it back to the owner. Maybe that's why the Torah says he's responsible to pay. But when it comes to if it's stolen or lost, this is something that's possible to go to look for it or to find a ganlev and to bring it back to the owner. Maybe this the shayl is not responsible for. Now Taisus here adds, even though the shvuya is where it got captured, which is a list of mezuyan, when there was an armed robbery and it was taken away, and there you learn out, the Gemara before said that by a shoyl, you're also going to be chayiv, but that's different, because an armed robber, you're afraid to go and deal with him, you're not going to be able to get it from him. Says the Gemara, the source for Gneva and Aveda that you're responsible by a shoyl is, Kiha the Tanya, like it says in the Braisa. The Torah says clearly that if it breaks or dies, you're responsible. So I would think only if it breaks or dies. How do I know if it's stolen or lost as well? So Amret Kavachaimer. So you can learn out with a Kavachaimer. The Shemesachar, that's potter, if a einus happens, like Shvura and Mesa. But he is responsible for Gneva and Aveda. Shoyl, Shachai v'Shvura and Mesa, a shoyl that's responsible for if it breaks or dies, definitely is responsible for Gneva Aveda. And then the Braisa adds, V'zehu kal v'chaimer she'ein olav tshuva. This is a kal v'chaimer that could be no answer to this, no refutation to this kal v'chaimer. So the Gemara explains, Mai ein olav tshuva. What is the Braisa emphasizing when it says that there's no refutation on it? Meaning the very fact that the Braisa says this means that the Tana knows that you may think to refute this, and therefore he's telling you that you can't refute this kal v'chaimer. Because if you'll argue and say, maybe you can refute this kal v'chaimer. I see that by Hashem Mesachar there's a stringency. Shekain mishalem tashlumi kefil b'toyin tainas listim mezuyan. If Hashem Mesachar claims to pater himself that what happened to the thing that I'm guarding for you was armed robbery, and then we find out that he actually stole it himself, he has to pay kefil. That doesn't apply by a shoyl. By a shoyl, he can't pater himself with saying that it was an armed robbery because he's responsible for that. So there's a stringency that you see here by Shem Mesachar. So maybe that's why he's chayiv in Gneva v'Aveda. You can't learn shoyl which does not have the stringency from it. But afilahachi, the answer is this is not a good refutation because karna the shoyl adife. The fact that by a shoyl he has to pay for a list of mezuyin, if he claims that it was an armed robbery, he has to pay the principal. Yes, he's responsible for this. That's a bigger stringency than the fact that by Hashem Mesachar he would be pater for the keren, but he would only be chayiv to pay if it turns out that he stole it. He would be chayiv to pay kefil. So therefore, a shoyl is still more stringent than the Shem Mesachar. So it's a kal v'chaimer to learn from there that a shoyl is chayiv in Gneva v'Aveda. Or Iba Yisayme, the Gemara says, or we could say that there is no such stringency by Hashem Mesachar, because Kasavar, the Tana of this Braisa holds, listim mezuyin, when you have an armed robbery, and that's the only kind of robbery that Hashem Mesachar would try to pater himself with, because a regular robbery, a geneva, he's chayiv for. But so if this is an armed robbery, gazlanhu, that's defined as a gzela. There's geneva and there's gzela. Geneva is when it's done not by force, in secret, or a gazlan, which is coming openly with an armed robbery, has a different halacha. There's no payment of kefil in such a case. So therefore, this stringency that we would have said that there is by Hashem Mesachar, this Tana holds that there's no payment of kefil. Now the Gemara moves on, and okay, so now we have the source from where we know that a shoyl is also responsible for Gneva v'Aveda. Liftor minalon. What's the source to say for Petor? As the Gemara discussed before, the Mishnah before here in the beginning of this Pedic says that if you borrowed with Bailim, the owner was borrowed together with the object that you borrowed from him, or you hired the owner together. So if it's bebailem, then the shoyel is potter. As you learn from the pasuk in Bala Vimoy, so then you don't pay. So the question is, we know in the pasuk it says regarding the case of an einus, if it broke or died, so then if the bailim are with you, you're potter. But how do you know that if a gneve va'aveda happened and the bailim were rent or hired with you or borrowed with together with the object, how do you know you'd be potter? If you'll argue and say, I compare it to the fact that the Torah says that if a broker died and the owner was borrowed with the object or with the animal, that you would be potter. And the same should be if a gneva and aveda happens as well, but you can't compare. Shvura mesa is an einus, so maybe only something which is an einus. There, the Torah is lenient and says that if the owner is with you, then you'd be potter. Ella says the Gemara, Gama Mishem Misachar. We learn out from the halacha by Hashem Misachar, because by Hashem Misachar, if a gneva and aveda happens, so he's responsible, but if the owner was with him, then he's going to be potter. So we learn from Shem Misachar that's potter by gneva and aveda if the owner is with him, that the same is also by a shoyel. And how do I know by Hashem Misachar that if the owner is with him, that he would be potter? Gamri chiyuve the shem misachar mechiyuve the shayil. I learn out the chiyuv of a shem misachar from the chiyuv of a shayil, that he's chayiv to pay just like by a shayil. So mala halon bebailim potter, just like by the shayil. So if it's with the owner, then it's going to be potter. Avkan bebailim, so too the chiyuv that there is by shem misachar. But if the owner is with him, he's going to be potter. So we're learning it out from the Shem Misachar. You learn out from the Shoyel. The Chiyuv of the Shem Misachar is learned out from the Shoyel. And then you can learn out the Shoyel from the Shem Misachar that Gneva Vaveda, you'll be potter if the Bailam was with you. So now the Gemara explains, B'mai Gomar, how exactly are you learning out the Shem Misachar from the Shoyel? If you're just comparing the two, so I can refute this comparison. Like we asked before, Shekain Einus. Over there, the Petor by the Shoyel is when the Bailim is with you, is in a case of Shvura Mesa, which is Einus. Who says that that same Petor you can apply by and compare to a Gneva Vaveda by a Shem Misachar, where it's not an Einus? Maybe the Torah is not lenient. So we can't learn it out simply with a svara of a Mematzina to compare them. Ella, says the Gemara, Omakra, the reason why we learn out Shem Misachar from the Shoyel is you see it from the Lashon of the Pasuk, because after it says the Parsha of Shem Misachar, it then continues with the Parsha of Shoyel, and it says, V'chi Yishal, and it says with a Vav. And if you'll be a Shoyel, Vav, Moisif al Inyirishin. That means a Vav is saying that the point about the Shoyel is connected to the point that it said before about the Shem Misachar. And therefore, V'yilmad Eliyayin Mitachten. We learn out the earlier Parsha of the Shem Misachar from the later Parsha of the Shoyel. This is a hekish, that just like by the Shoyel, there's the Petur of Shmira B'Bailim, so too by the Shem Misachar, which is Chayiv and Gneva Vaveda, but if it's with the Bailim there, you're going to be Pater. See, we learn from this Vav. But still, what did we say before? Now, after we know that by Shem Misachar, you're Pater for Shmira B'Bailim, for the Gneva Vaveda, then we want to learn now the Shoyel from the Shem Misachar that is also Pater by Gneva Vaveda, but we can ask on that. Vakati Shoyel Mishem Misachar Legama. You can't learn out and compare the Gneva Vaveda that happens by a Shoyel from the Gneva Vaveda that happens by a Shem Misachar. Because the Kila Mifrach, I can refute it and say, Mal Shem Misachar Shekem Pater B'Shvura Mesa. I see that by Shem Misachar the Torah is more lenient. He's not responsible for Shvura Mesa. So that's why we can say that the leniency of Bebailim by Gneva Vaveda should apply as well. However, by the Shoyel, Shechayev b'Shvura Mesa, he's Chayev for Shvura Mesa. So who says that the leniency that Bebailim by Gneva Vaveda to be Potter should apply? So Elo, Gneva Vaveda b'Shoyel l'chiyuva minalan. So here the Gemara goes back and says the fact that a Shoyel is Chayev for Gneva Vaveda. From where do I know this? The Gama Mishem Misachar. I only learned that out, as we said before, from the Shem Misachar. Doesn't say it clearly by the Shoyel. I learned it out from the Shem Misachar. The Gemara before brought the Kavachayim, and it said that there's no pircha on that. And so if I learn out the whole chiyuv of Gneva Vaveda by the Shoyel from the Shem Misachar, if so, so therefore, if that's what you're learning it out from, you can't be chayiv more than what the source is chayiv. So Magneva Aveda the Shem Isachar Bebailim Potter. So just like the Gneva Aveda by Shem Isachar, if the owner is with you, you Potter. Av Gneva Aveda the Shoyel Nami Bebailim Potter. So the Shoyel, the Gneva Aveda by the Shoyel is only learned from the Shem Isachar. The same halacha should apply. That if it's with the Bailim, you'll be Potter. So the Gemara says, okay, this is a good limud, but this limud is only true according to the opinion that says that when you learn not a kavachaymer, then you could only apply what the source has for what you're learning out. But the opinion that says that there's no dai, you can't say that it's enough not to learn out more than what the source has. This is brought always in the Gemara. This is Rab Tarfon's opinion. So what are we going to say? Even if the source is from Shem Isachar, it's still possible that the Gneva V'Aveda by the Shoyel is chayiv more than even the Shem Isachar. The Shem Isachar could be potter b'bailim, but maybe by the Shoyel the Gneva V'Aveda is still chayiv. So the Gemara concludes, we go back to the Vav that we mentioned before. Omakra Vichi Yishal, the Torah says the Vav of Vichi Yishal connecting the Parsha of the Shem Isachar to the Parsha of the Shoyel. Vav Maisav Alin Yerishai, the Vav adds to what it said before. V'yilmad Elyai Mitachtain. We learn out the Parsha of Shem Isachar to the Parsha of Shoyel. Again, let me say that again. V'yilmad Elyai Mitachtain. We learn out from the Shoyel to the Parsha of Shem Isachar, like the Gemara said before, that we're learning out to the Shem Isachar, and also V'tachtain Miyelyin. But now the Gemara says the reverse is also true. I could learn out also the Shoyel from the Shem Isachar. To say that just like the Shem Isachar, Bebailim is Potter, so too by the Shoyel, Bebailim is going to be Potter. So we learn it in both directions. We're learning both from the Shem Isachar, we learn from the Shoyel, and then we learn the Shoyel from the Shem Isachar. That's what the Vav teaches us.
So the Gemara asked that up, no?
Yeah, but before it was just a mematzinu, so the Gemara refuted it. But when you have a hekish, the Gemara doesn't ask a perche. This vav is a hekish, so that the Gemara doesn't ask a perche. I think this vav here is a vav. The Alter Rebbe brings a look at the Torah that there's one vav you have in the Torah. The Torah says one vav, and on that is based the whole Perek and Shas. And he says you see over here that Torah Shabbat Pez Murum is in one Eisen Torah. I think it's this vav over here, the V'chi Yishal. Yeah. Itmer, we learned another machlokes. Pshiyah bebailim. So until we're talking about the halacha of a oynis by a shayel, and the owner was there, so you potter, or gneva vaveda, with the owner you potter. But how about if it's pshiyah bebailim by a shem chinam, that's chayiv to pay if he was negligent, but he hired or borrowed the owner along with this thing that he has by him, will he also be potter because of this halacha of bebailim that you potter? Do we apply it to the pshiyah by a shem chinam? Ravach argued about this. One of them said that no, here you will be chayiv. Another opinion is potter, that you'll be potter here. So the Gemara explains both opinions. The opinion that says that you chayiv says Mikra nidrash lefanov v'loy lifnei fanov. We have the vav that connects the two parshas of Shoyel and Shem Isachar. That by both of them, bebailim you potter. But you don't go back to an earlier parsha, which is the Shem Chinam, which is two parshas before the Shoyel, to teach there that bebailim you potter. There you're going to be chayiv. So Hilkach, therefore, in Ba'alav Imai, Ashem Chinam Loiksiv. Ba'alav Imai does not refer back to the two parshas before by Shem Chinam. Now, the fact that you chayiv for pshia, for negligence, by a Shem Isachar and a Shoyel, like siv, it doesn't say there clearly in the Torah. Hilkach b'Shem Isachar or b'Shoyel chiyov. The fact that by a Shem Isachar and by a Shoyel you chayiv for a pshia, the kavachaymer m'Shem Chinam. That we learn with a svara with a kavachaymer from the Shem Chinam. If a Shem Chinam that's not paid, then it's not all the hana is all his, and he's chayiv for a pshia. Definitely the Shem Isachar and the Shoyel are chayiv for the pshia. Avol b'Bailim liptur. But to say that you learn out from the Shem Chinam that you should say that for a pshia you potter if it's bebailim, and then to say that the same thing is also by Shem Isachar and Shoyel, that we don't learn out. Huh? No, he's not. He's not potter bebailim. My time, why? Ki ksiv in balav imay lo yishalim, because when it says in balav imay lo yishalim ashoyel. Oh, it says it by Shoyel, and then we have the vav that it goes back on the Shem Isachar as well. That's where it says. On these chiyuvim where the Torah says that ba'alavima you potter, so over there you're going to be potter. But One second. I read too far in over here. Again, okay, that over there where it says it clearly, that's where it says that you'll be pater. This is the explanation of the mandama that said that Pshia bebailim by Shem Chinam is not learnt out from what it says by Shoyal and Shem Sachar, and therefore you're going to be chayev. Mandama pator, the opinion that says that even by Shem Chinam, and it was a negligence, but if it's bebailim, I do learn out that he would be pater. Kisavar, he holds mikra nidrash lefanov v'lifnei fanov. That vav connects the parsha of Shoel where it says ba'al avima yipater to the parsha before, which is the Shem Sachar, and it connects it also back to the Shem Chinam, which is 2 parshas before. And therefore v'chiksiv in ba'al avimai Hashem Chinam na miksiv. In ba'al avimai goes back on the Shemer as well. That's the machlokes here. So Tanan, what did it say in the Mishnah, the first Mishnah of the Peirik? Hashem l'sapara. Person borrowed a cow, shal baila, and he borrowed also the services of the owner of the car with it. Or Hashem l'sapara, he borrowed the car and then v'sochar baila, and he hired the owner with it. Or shal baila ischaram, first he borrowed the person, the owner, or hired him, v'achakach shal apara, and then he borrowed the cow, umeis, and it died pater. In all these cases, it will be pater. It's ba'al of imay. It doesn't mention in the Mishnah that a Shem Chinam would be pater. So it seems from here that a Shem Chinam ba'al avimai is not a patur. Well, the Taimei, so the Gemara asks, it's not a good raya, because according to your question, Shem Sacha mikatani, does the Mishnah mention a case of the Shem Sacha that he's going to be pater? And that we know is pater, as we learned from the Vav in the Pasuk. Ella, the answer is, Tane milse d'chsive behedye katani. The Tana is only mentioning the case of the Shoyal, which is pater, because that's where the Petur of Baal Avimai says in the Torah clearly, the Asi Midrasha like a Tani. But the Shem Sachar, or if even we say it refers to the Shem Chinam, which is only learned from the Drasha of the Vav, that the Tana of the Mishnah does not mention.
It does say Sachar.
No. It says over there, right. Yeah, but it was talking about the cow was borrowed. Right.
But the cow is only a Shoyal.
Right, only a Shoyal. Toshema, the Gemara brings from a Braise. So the Braise says, Shoala v'sho baleima. He borrowed the cow and he borrowed the owner with it. Sochra v'socha baleima. He rented the cow and he hired the owner with it. Shoala, he borrowed the cow v'socha baleima and he hired the owner with it. Schara, he rented the cow v'sho baleima and he borrowed the owner with it. So here the Braise is mentioning both borrowing a cow and renting a cow. Even when you hire the owner to do work for you, he's doing work for you in a different place. Umesa, and this cow that you borrowed or rented died, pater. You'll be pater. Okay, so now here this Braise is mentioning also renting a cow. Now Svarua, the ones that wanted to bring a raya from this Braise, so they thought to say, "Ha mani, Rabbi Yehudi." This Braise that's talking about a rental is following Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. The Amar Seicher Kishomer Sachadami. That the halacha of a seicher is that he pays like a Shem Sachar. So therefore, so we see here that this Tana is not just mentioning the case of Baal Avimai regarding a Shoyal, which is clear in the Pasuk. He's mentioning also the seicher, which is like a Shem Sachar, and that's only learned from a drasha. Like a Tani, but the Shem Chinam he does not mention. So that is proof that Shem Chinam is not part of the drasha. You don't go lifnei fanav. And says the Gemara, there's no raya because I could say how mani Rab Meiri. I could say this Braise is actually Rab Meir's opinion. The Omar Rab Meir says, as we had before, Seicher Kashem Chinam Dami, that a renter has the halacha like a Shem Chinam, and the Tan is Shem Chinam. So the Braise is giving the example of a renter which is like a Shem Chinam, and V'hu Adin l'Shem Sachar, and it's understood automatically that the same applies to Shem Sachar as well. So Adarabah, this Braise is actually saying that Baal Avimai applies to both Shem Chinam and the Shem Sachar. Now, if you want, you could say that this Braise is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, like we began saying, and the reason is, Rabbi Baravua taught the two opinions of Meir Rabbi Yehuda. He exchanged their opinions, and he taught Seicha Ketzad Mishalem. How does the Seicha pay? Rabbi Meir Keshem Sachar. Rabbi Meir was the one that says Shem Sachar, and Rabbi Yehuda Keshem Chinam, and Rabbi Yehuda says he pays like a Shem Chinam. So we could say that this Braise is Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, now the Gemara starts with different halachas regarding this Petur of Ba'al Avimai. Amar Rav Amnuna said, Lo'ayla muchayev, a person that borrows, he'll always be chayev to pay. Ad shetehei para v'chayrish ba, chamoir u'mechamer achrea. only if you borrowed the owner together with the cow that you borrowed from him, and he's actually doing work with you in the work that you're using the cow for. He's plowing with you. Or if it's a donkey that you borrowed from him, he's actually leading the donkey itself. That's one thing. So the Ba'al Avima is only a patur if the owner is actually doing work with the donkey or the cow itself, mamish, not work in another place. And another thing, the owner has to be with you from the time when you borrowed until the time when it broke or died, when the aynus happened. Only then are you going to be potter. Says the Gemara, so Alma, what do I see from this? Kasava Rav Amnuna holds, Ba'al Avimai akula milsa mashma. When the Torah says Ba'al Avimai, it's going on the entire pasuk. Because what does it say in the pasuk? V'chiyishal ish me'imre eyu, v'nishbare meis, and then it says Ba'al Aveni Yishalem. So when it says Ba'al Aveni Yishalem, which means if the owner is with you, then you don't pay. It's going on the whole pasuk. V'chiyishal. He has to be with you at the time of the borrowing, and he also has to be with you at the time of Nishbarei Meis. So the Gemara asks on this from the Brisa that we just brought before, Masiv Rava. The Brisa says, Shala v'shal baleima. He borrowed the cow and he borrowed the owner with it. Schara sacha baleima. He rented the cow and hired the owner with it. Schara v'shal baleima. He rented the cow and he borrowed the owner with it. Or Shala v'sacha baleima. He borrowed the cow and hired the owner with it. Even if the owner is doing work in a different place and the cow dies, potter, you're going to be potter. So my love, don't you think the simple pshat of the words in a makam acher means it means that even though the owner is not with you at the time when it's breaking or died, he did work for you in a different place altogether, the patur of Ba'al Avimai still applies. Not like Rav Amnuna said that it's only if the owner is with you over there doing the work, plowing in the field, or being mechamer with the donkey. Says the Gemara, loy. That's not the pshat. And when it says b'makamacher, what does b'makamacher mean? Ba'isa malacha. The owner is working with the cow in the same malacha. But what does makamacher mean? Elamai makamacher the kamar pivazal kama. That the owner that you hired together with the cow, he's going ahead of the cow in the field to soften the ground when the cow comes to plow. Meaning that the owner is not mamish doing the plowing. He's not holding the goad of the animal to steer the plowing itself, but he's going ahead in the field. That's called makamacher. How could you say that this is the pshat of this brayse? In the Sefer, it says there the case where the owner is mamish plowing with the cow. That's the case that the Sefer says, as the Gemara is going to quote in a second here. If so, Reishe b'malacha cheres. So from that we could understand, then the Reishe is coming to teach a chiddush that even if he's not doing work there together with the cow, he's doing work in a completely different malacha. Why? The Tani Sefer. What does it say in the Sefer? Sha'alav achkach sha'al balea, scharav achkach sacha balea imo. So whether he borrowed both the cow and the owner, or he rented and hired the owner with it, even if he's going to be plowing, and the owner is the one that's plowing with the cow mamish, he's still going to be chayiv. And the reason is because over here, in this case in the Sefer, he only borrowed or hired the owner after he already borrowed or rented the cow. The ptur of Ba'al Avima is only if at the time when he borrowed or rented, the owner was then also being already rented and hired with or borrowed with the cow. So over here in the Sefer you see that what's the chiddush that it's coming to say? That because he didn't hire or borrow the owner at the time when the beginning of the borrowing or rental began, so therefore the ptur doesn't apply. And there it's talking about when it's al gabe, when the owner is mamish doing the work with the cow itself. And the chiddush over there is, but he wasn't there from the beginning, so you're still going to be chayiv. So if so, it's logical to say that in the reisha, what was the main chiddush of the reisha? That even though the owner was not doing the work with the cow itself, but he was there from the beginning. When you borrowed, he was there with you. So it seems like it's coming to say that the main point is that the owner has to be with you at the time when you borrowed, at the beginning. And later on, even if it's going to be b'malacha acheres, even if it's going to be in a totally different malacha, you're still going to be pater. That's what it seems like this brayse is saying. So the Gemara says, no, not necessarily. Omri, so they said to answer this, Reisha v'Sefer b'isam malacha. I can say that both the Reisha and the Sefer, the owner is doing work there with the cow itself. And the Reisha Rebusa Kamashmalan, the Reisha of this Bryce is saying a Chiddush, the Sefer Rebusa Kamashmalan, and the Sefer is also saying a Chiddush. Reisha Rebusa Kamashmalan, the Chiddush of the Reisha is the Afal Gav, the Lav Al Gaba. That even if the owner that you hired with this cow is not mamish doing the work of the plowing on the cow, Ela Ba'isa Malacha, he's doing work over there in the same work, like the Gemara said before, he's softening the ground ahead of the cow. Kivin the Hava Bailan B'Shas Sheila Potter. So the main thing is, even though he's not mamish the one that's plowing on the cow, but because he was there at the time of the beginning of the when you borrow the cow, that's Baal Avimai and you'll be Potter. That's the main thing. Now the Sefer Abusa Kamash Malon, and the Sefer it's saying also a Chiddush, Da'avagav Dal Gaba. Even if the owner is mamish the one that's plowing with the cow that you borrowed. But Kivin the Loihayu Bailam B'Shas Sheila, but because they weren't there from the beginning, from the time when you borrowed the cow, Chayiv. So therefore you're going to be Chayiv. That's the Chiddush of the Reisha and the Sefer. But the Gemara doesn't accept this answer, and the Gemara says, "Hi, my." How could you say this? How could you say that the lashon of malacha cheres in the Reisha, the lashon of b'mokem acher, that's oisem malacha b'mokem acher, that it says in the Reisha means that he's basically doing work over there with the cow. Elamai is doing it a little bit ahead, and he's plowing in the ground. How could you say that that's what it's saying here? If you would say Reisha b'malacha cheres, that the Reisha is actually talking when the owner that you rented or hired or borrowed together with the cow, he's literally doing a completely different work. And the Sefer ba'isa malacha, and in the Sefer, the owner is mamish working on the cow. He's the one that's plowing with the cow. So then, Hainu Rabusa. Then I would understand why the Braisa divides it, and that's the Chiddush over here. And the Braisa is saying the main thing is that the owner has to be there at the time when the rental or the borrowing began. And as long as he was there then, even if later he's going to be doing work, b'mokem acher, you're going to be potter. And if he was not there in the beginning, even if he's mamish plowing with the cow, when it dies, he's still going to be chayiv. So that's understood. But if you're going to say that really both the Reisha and the Sefer, the owner is doing work with the cow, whether mamish on the cow, plowing, or whether right there ahead of the cow, softening the ground. My Rabusa, what is the Chiddush over here of the Braisa? Idi ve'idi ba'osim malacha hava. Why does the Braisa have to divide this into two different cases? In both cases, the owner is right there working with the cow. Why is that? Why should we even think that there's a difference if the owner is mamish on the cow plowing, or the owner is doing work ahead of the cow, softening the ground? He's mamish there with the cow. It's the same thing. So why is it dividing it into two cases, the Reisha and the Sefer? The Mishnah should just say one simple point, that the owner has to be there at the time when the rental or the borrowing began, and later on, even if he's doing a work that's not there, you're still going to be potter. What's the point of the Braisa here separating these two cases? Really, the point that the Gemara is asking over here is, the Gemara is not accepting this whole answer that it gave all the way in the beginning over here, that when it says b'mokem acher, mokem acher means that he's really doing work over here with this cow. Elamai, he's not mamish on the cow plowing, he's just a little bit ahead, softening the ground. And then in the Sefer, when it says al gaba, it means that he's mamish plowing with the cow. The Gemara doesn't accept that. It's the same thing. He's b'poil, he's there with the cow itself. Why would the Braisa divide this into two cases? So this remains a question on Rav Amnuna's din, because the Gemara now is saying that it makes sense to say, what the Braisa is saying is that even if the owner is b'mokem acher, literally, still you're going to be potter as long as he was there at the beginning of the borrowing, not like Rav Amnuna. Tanya, another question of Rav Amnuna of when we learned in the Braisa, mimashma shenema. From this that it says in the pasuk, we would understand that it says in Balav imay lo yishalem, that if the owner is with you, so then you don't pay. So any ideya shem bolav any mashalam yishalim. Would I not understand that if the owner was not with you, so then you're responsible? Elamat tamid loyma. Why does the pasuk have to clearly spell out as well? But all of any moy, that if the owner was not with you, then you do have to pay. Shalom yishalim. The pasuk there says. It's coming to teach you, if the owner was with you at the time when you borrowed, so then, in order for you to be potter, he doesn't have to be there later as well when it actually broke or died. But on the reverse, if the owner was with you only later when it broke or died, so then you're not going to be potter unless he was actually with you there before when the borrowing began. So the Bryce here clearly says, not like Rav Hamnuna, that it's only from the beginning that matters, if the owner was with you. Now exactly the pshat in this drasha, where the Gemara sees that the significant point is that he should be with you at the time when the borrowing began, that will be the continuation of the Gemara on Daf Tzadik Vav. Now, furthermore, we have another brayso also that says not like Rav Hamnuna. So the brayso says, the pasuk says that if the owner is not with you, you have to pay. Say any day, would I not understand that if the owner is with you, lo yishalem, you don't have to pay. Why does it have to say also the halacha that if the owner is with you that you don't pay? Is coming to tell you, as long as in the time when it left from the owner's possession and he was with you, he was hired or borrowed with the cow at that time, then whatever happens later, you're going to be potter, even if later on he's not working for you anymore. So to Yufta the Rav Hamnuna, this clearly refutes what Rav Hamnuna said, that it has to be throughout from the beginning, throughout even later as well. To Yufta, this refutes what Rav Hamnuna said. Okay, the next piece of Gemara goes all the way down, and the Gemara will explain how you see the drasha that the significant time is from the beginning, when the borrowing begins, that only then, if the owner is with you, are you going to be potter.